Welcome back to the channel and get ready for another incredible deep dive into the mysterious world of rare coins as we uncover shocking stories, unbelievable values, and the hidden treasures that might be sitting in your pocket change right now, because today we are exploring the legendary 1944 wheat penny, a coin that ordinary people have spent without a second thought for decades but which has become the center of one of the most fascinating tales in numismatic history, with rumors and collector excitement claiming that certain extremely rare era varieties of this 1944 wheat penny have skyrocketed in value, with the most sought-after examples said to be worth up to a staggering $36 million due to bizarre minting mistakes, unexplained anomalies, and a remarkable historical background that continues to drive treasure hunters everywhere. And as we take this incredible journey into everything that makes the 1944 wheat penny so desirable, so collectible, and so unexpectedly valuable, we will look at why experts and enthusiasts pay attention to every tiny detail on these post-war cents, what errors make these coins dramatically different from everyday wheat pennies, and why the sheer possibility of finding one keeps everyone checking their coin jars. So sit back and stay focused because this one is going to be an epic story you do not want to miss as we go through what makes the 1944 wheat penny the star of so many big money discoveries, starting with one of the wildest minting situations in United States history, where the country was in the middle of World War II and had to rethink how its coins were made, because in 1943 the mint made pennies out of steel coated in zinc to save copper for wartime supplies. But due to the constant pressure of minting millions of coins, complications arose. And as 1944 production began, the mint switched back to copper using spent shell casings from the war effort, yet it appears that a few leftover steel planchets were still stuck in the machinery and accidentally struck with the 1944 wheat penny design, creating the famous 1944 steel cents, coins so incredibly rare that it is believed only around 24 exist from each mint, and when one of these almost mythical errors appears at auction, collectors go absolutely crazy, bidding millions because it represents a rare moment of history, a blend of wartime manufacturing chaos and numismatic mystery, and that is only the beginning of what makes this year so thrilling for collectors. Because another category of the 1944 wheat penny that fuels the imagination of treasure hunters is the possibility of off-metal errors, where the coin is struck on a planchet that was never intended for that denomination, like a foreign coin blank or leftover experimental metal, and when these off-metal 1944 pennies turn up, especially ones that appear to be copper bronze struck at the wrong weight, the prices can go from ordinary pocket change into the realm of luxury. Sports cars, fine jewelry, or even a mansion, all from one tiny piece of metal. And as we look deeper into the features of these coins, collectors examine every corner of the design, from the portrait of Abraham Lincoln on the obverse to the familiar wheat ears on the reverse, studying the font of the date, the sharpness of the mint mark, and even the texture of the fields for any sign of an error like double dies, repunched mint marks, clipped planchets, die cracks, lamination errors, broad strikes, and more, all of which can contribute to higher values. And while a normal 1944 wheat penny might only be worth a few cents or a bit more if it is in pristine condition, the special ones with mistakes become legendary overnight, and this has led to countless stories of people finding a strange 1944 wheat penny in their grandparents' belongings, in old candy jars, in inherited coin boxes, or just among their loose coins, taking it for appraisal and discovering it was $1 million treasure, which only builds more excitement and drives more people to search. And this is where the rumor grows even stronger, because collectors have speculated that one coin in particular, a perfect example of a 1944-era wheat penny with flawless condition, dramatic rarity, and unique historical significance, could reach or exceed an unbelievable $36 million in value if it ever hit the auction block under the right conditions, especially since some of the most expensive coins in the world have reached astronomical prices simply due to bidding wars among wealthy buyers who want the prestige of owning something nobody else in the world can claim. and the possibility that someone somewhere might currently possess a coin like that without even knowing it is what adds so much magic to the story, making people analyze their coins carefully under bright lights or using magnifying lenses, hoping to spot something extraordinary, and as we explore the long list of what to look for. One of the most talked about features is the weight of the penny, because a typical 1944 cent made from recycled wartime brass should weigh around 3.11 grams, while a steel one weighs closer to 2.7 grams, and anything significantly different becomes suspicious, especially if a magnet reacts to the coin, because that is a big red flag indicating a potential 1944 steel cent. A coin so prized that collectors will pay fortunes for even one in worn condition, and if the coin happens to be in mint state, with full original luster and sharp details, it becomes one of the most valuable coins ever discovered. And yet there are other mysteries too, like coins struck with wrong mint marks, such as a Denver mint mark on a planchet meant for Philadelphia, or odd coloring on the coin's surface suggesting experimental metal composition. And every detail matters because authentication is essential when dealing with coins that could be worth millions, and even though most people will never encounter the exact Holy Grail version of this 1944 wheat penny, the number of unusual pieces reported by collectors keeps hope alive, as the legend of the $1 million wheat penny spreads across coin communities, social media platforms, and news outlets that pick up stories anytime a rare example sells for an eye-opening price. And the emotional connection people feel to this coin only increases when they remember that it was created during a time of sacrifice and unity in American history, where every resource was precious, every effort mattered, and even humble pennies became part of the war fight, turning ordinary pocket change into a symbol of national perseverance. And as decades passed after the war, most people saved wheat pennies casually without knowing which year or which era might make theirs special. But now, with advanced technology, anyone can weigh a coin, examine it under digital magnification, and compare minute details with professional references, transforming what was once a rare expert-only activity into a worldwide treasure hunt open to everyone. And this accessibility adds to the hype because each new discovery by a normal person, not a seasoned collector, proves that genuinely life-changing coins can be found anywhere, from thrift shops to dusty basements, with stories emerging constantly about people cashing in on lucky finds that fund college tuition, buy houses, or allow them to retire early. And when we imagine rare varieties of the 1944 wheat penny reaching tens of millions in value, it does not seem far-fetched when considering how historical artifacts with unique stories often outperform art, gems, and precious metals at high-profile auctions, especially when only a handful exist in the entire world, fueling the desire of billionaires and elite collectors to own the best of the best. And we should also think about how condition grading influences prices, because a perfect grade like MS 68 or MS 69 is astonishingly rare for any wheat penny, and when matched with a dramatic mint error, the result becomes a coin that experts describe as irreplaceable, priceless, and a true museum-worthy treasure. And every collector dreams of holding something like that in their own hands, feeling the weight of history and potential wealth combined. And this is exactly why the story of the 1944 wheat penny will always excite people, because it blends the fascination of rare collectibles, the curiosity of solving a historical mystery, and the thrill of possibly striking it rich through something as ordinary as examining your spare change. And even though not every story about the $36 million price tag has been confirmed in official records, the excitement surrounding the idea keeps the momentum going, keeps coin hunters motivated, and keeps the legend alive that somewhere, maybe tucked away in a forgotten drawer or stored in a dusty tin box, the world's most valuable wheat penny is waiting to be found by someone who least expects it. Next. 1945 wheat penny. Today transactions for just a tiny fraction of a dollar can actually be worth as much as $24 million because of its mysterious errors, surprising mistakes, and fascinating minting anomalies that have captured the attention of serious collectors, passionate treasure hunters, and anyone who dreams of being the lucky person who discovers a life-changing rare penny hiding in pocket change or an old jar forgotten in a drawer, because the 1945 wheat penny may seem common, but behind its iconic Lincoln portrait and classic wheat ears design lies a range of rare possibilities that elevate a tiny copper coin into a multimillion-dollar treasure, starting with the fact that 1945 was a year of massive production during the final days of World War II, when the U.S. Mint was under pressure to produce as many coins as possible to support economic activities and wartime demands. And during such intense production environments, mistakes happened, dies wore out, metal blanks were mixed up, planchets were reused or mismatched, and errors slipped into circulation, resulting in some highly desirable and extremely rare variants of the 1945 wheat penny, and collectors around the world are obsessed with finding these variations because once a special error is confirmed and graded, its value can skyrocket to unimaginable levels, sometimes reaching millions, as is the case with the legendary 1945 wheat penny rumored to have sold for around $24 million due to a combination of rarity, condition, and an extraordinary minting mistake involving a wrong planchet, which means the coin was struck on a metal blank intended for a different denomination or year, and this type of error is one of the most sought after because the mix-ups between copper, steel, and other metals from years like 1943 and 1944 created incredible numismatic mysteries. So imagine finding a 1945 wheat penny that is not made of the usual copper alloy but instead appears silver-colored because it was struck on a leftover steel planchet from 1943, a year when pennies were made from steel coated with zinc due to copper being needed for wartime ammunition, and when 1944 returned to copper pennies, a few steel blanks were accidentally left behind in the presses, leading to the creation of extremely rare transition-era coins which have already sold for hundreds of thousands to millions. So a verified 1945 steel wheat penny could surpass them all because almost none are known, and if one exists and is authenticated in pristine condition, the price could easily reach $24 million in the right auction with the right collectors competing intensely. But that is not the only type of error that gives the 1945 penny huge value, because there are many more variations that collectors keep hunting for, such as double die errors where the design appears doubled due to misalignment during the die creation process, most commonly visible in the letters of Liberty, the date 1945, or the phrase, "In God we trust" on the obverse side of the coin, and when this doubling is dramatic and easy to see with the naked eye, the value increases massively, especially if the coin remains in mint state condition with little to no wear, and then there are off-center strikes where the image of Lincoln or the wheat ears is not properly centered because the planchet was not correctly seated during striking. And the more extreme the off-center placement while still showing the date fully, the more valuable the coin becomes, since collectors love visibly striking errors that make the coin unique and instantly identifiable. And we cannot forget clipped planchets where a portion of the coin's rim is missing because the blank was improperly cut before stamping, resulting in a crescent-shaped missing section that adds desirability when paired with a clean and strong strike. And there are repunched mint marks, particularly on 1945 coins minted in Denver and San Francisco, where the mint worker re-stamped the D or S mint mark after a misaligned first attempt, creating overlapping impressions that collectors crave, and die cracks or cuds where the die itself develops breaks or chips, leading to raised metal lines or blobs on the coin surface that represent the aging struggles of the tools used during rushed wartime minting. And all these tiny variations combine into a treasure hunt where anyone could be holding a penny worth thousands, tens of thousands, or even millions, all because of the smallest manufacturing slip in a chaotic year of American history. And when you think about the fact that billions of 1945 pennies were produced across Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco, it makes the rare variants even more thrilling because the chance of finding one becomes like winning a historical lottery. especially if the coin is graded by a top professional coin service like PCGS or NGC and receives a high mint state rating such as MS 67 or MS 68, which means the surface is stunningly well preserved with full luster and minimal or no scratches, magnifying the value beyond imagination. And although most 1945 wheat pennies are extremely common and worth just a few cents to a few dollars depending on where, the possibility that one or two extremely rare transition errors slipped into circulation is what fuels the legend of the $24 million value. And stories circulate of collectors spending years searching through rolls of wheat cents, checking metal composition with magnets and scales, inspecting dates under microscopes, and dreaming of discovering one magical coin that changes their lives forever. And when we examine the historical context deeper, the 1945 penny becomes even more fascinating because it symbolizes not just currency but the resilience of a nation emerging victorious from war, carrying the hopes and dreams of millions of Americans into a peacetime economy. And each coin, no matter how small, was part of everyday life during a pivotal moment in history, making its preservation in high grade incredibly meaningful to collectors who value both financial return and connection to the past. And this emotional attachment further increases value because when a coin tells a story, wealthy collectors are willing to pay extraordinary prices to own a piece of history that feels alive. And that is how a rare 1945 wheat penny with a striking minting error could attract bids reaching $24 million, not only because of metal rarity or condition but because it represents the perfect storm of historical significance, production anomaly, and collector desire. And while some people doubt that such high prices could be true, the numismatic market has proven repeatedly that when a one-of-a-kind or nearly impossible-to-find coin appears, collectors with deep pockets show up ready to spend whatever it takes. Just as we have seen with coins like the 1943 bronze penny and the 1794 flowing hair dollar, which sold for millions due to uniqueness and historical value, proving that money follows rarity and passion. And the 1945 penny also brings mystery because some of these rare errors may not have been discovered yet, meaning they could be waiting in someone's inherited collection, an attic box, a forgotten bankroll, or even pocket change from a coin jar that has been sitting around for decades. And the thought that a tiny copper wheat penny minted 80 years ago could turn an average person into a millionaire overnight creates excitement, curiosity, and a wave of treasure-hunting energy among people of all ages, making the hunt thrilling and worthwhile even when many coins turn out to be common, because that one chance, that one find, is enough motivation to keep searching. And when you consider that 1945 wheat pennies come with 3 mint marks or none at all, the no mint mark Philadelphia coins being the most common, and D for Denver and S for San Francisco offering slightly less common options, each mint brought its own potential for unique striking errors or planchet variations, meaning that collectors closely check the mint mark area for any signs of doubling, repunching, overstrikes, misplaced mint marks, and subtle details introduced when dies were manually stamped, and these discoveries help authenticate the coin's rarity. And then there is the metal composition factor, where most 1945 pennies used a copper alloy of 95% copper and 5% tin and zinc, but anomalies in composition, like steel or foreign planchets, make the value soar immensely, and advanced metal testing methods such as XRF scanning can determine whether the coin has unexpected elements that confirm a minting mistake. Next, 1946 wheat penny. Today we are talking about a 1946 wheat penny that people say could be worth an astonishing $12 million due to errors, mistakes, and extremely rare minting possibilities that set it apart from ordinary coins in circulation. And in this single continuous deep dive journey we are going to explore every detail, every mystery, every tiny minting anomaly, every collector theory, and every surprising fact that makes this little piece of metal potentially more valuable than some of the most luxurious celebrity mansions, So buckle up as we explore how a simple 1-cent coin minted back in 1946 right after World War II could rise to become one of the most sought-after treasures in the world of numismatics, especially when collectors today are more passionate than ever in hunting down treasures hiding in their own pocket change. And it all begins with the iconic wheat penny, a favorite for collectors because it represents a fascinating era of United States history, when coins were not just money but symbols of national pride and determination. And in 1946 the United States Mint was transitioning out of wartime materials since the steel pennies of 1943 were no longer needed. But even with copper returning to mintage, things at the mint were far from perfect. Human error was more common, machines were being adjusted, and leftover planchets from previous years and wartime experiments sometimes got mixed in, meaning that a rare batch of 1946 pennies ended up with features that should have never existed. And that is where the treasure hunt story gets thrilling, because some collectors claim there are versions of the 1946 wheat penny struck on leftover steel planchets from 1943, which instantly transforms an ordinary penny into a multi-million-dollar prize. And others say that transitional errors, off-metal strikes, double dies, repunchment marks, and misaligned die strikes all came into play that year, making certain 1946 pennies extremely unique and highly valuable. And before we go deeper into specifics, just imagine the excitement of someone searching through a jar of coins at home, unaware that a piece of metal worth only 1 cent on paper could actually be a rare error coin desired by elite collectors around the globe. And experts believe that if a 1946 penny possesses multiple rare characteristics, like being struck on the wrong planchet while also displaying a significant double die error, its value could skyrocket past the millions, even reaching the mythical $12 million mark that stuns everyone who hears it. And think about this for a moment, a coin that most people overlook without a second thought becoming a once-in-a-generation jackpot. But what exactly are the errors that could make a 1946 wheat penny so special? Well, first let's talk about the off-metal errors, because after 1943, when steel pennies were used to conserve copper for the war effort, many leftover steel planchets stayed in facilities and sometimes mistakenly were fed into presses years later. And a 1946 penny accidentally struck on steel would instantly be one of the rarest coins known, since by that year pennies should only have been made of copper. And if a collector were lucky enough to find a 1946 penny that sticks to a magnet, that's the first major hint that something is very unusual. And that uniqueness is what drives astronomical market prices, because rarity is the heart of numismatic passion. But that is not the only scenario. There are also rumors about 1946 pennies struck on foreign planchets, since the U.S. Mint helped produce coins for other nations during that era. And if a penny was mistakenly struck on a thinner, differently sized, or differently colored metal, collectors would race to authenticate it, because those quirks make the coin not just rare but historically significant, tying it to a fascinating system of global mint cooperation. Yet another possibility is the existence of transitional bronze variations, where different alloys were being tested and mixed into production by mistake. And sometimes coins end up with subtle color differences or unusual weights because the copper-zinc ratio wasn't perfectly controlled, meaning that an extra heavy or slightly lighter 1946 wheat penny could be yet another multi-million-dollar treasure. And the story keeps getting more exciting when we consider the world of die errors, because a doubling error, such as a double die obverse or reverse, could create a dramatic expanding of lettering or the date, making the coin visually stunning and highly desirable. And collectors especially love doubled mottos or bold doubling on Lincoln's eye or beard, which creates a striking appearance that can easily be identified even without magnification. And errors like these are extremely rare because they come from a specific moment when die setup went wrong, meaning only a very small number of coins carry that exact flaw, and scarcity creates demand, while demand skyrockets value, making it clear why the 1946 double die coins could become highly valuable. And then there's the repunched mint mark situation, particularly on coins struck at the Denver Mint where the D Mint mark might have been hand-punched more than once, leading to visible overlapping impressions if the first placement was slightly off, and while that error alone may not reach millions, when combined with off-metal or double die features, collectors start talking about values unthinkable in ordinary coin collecting conversations, because we're not dealing with standard mint issues but extremely specific flaws that make each coin one of a kind. And remember, numismatics is a hobby fueled by rarity, curiosity, and competition among collectors who dream of owning the next legendary masterpiece from American minting history. Which is why record-breaking auction sales keep rising and encouraging even more treasure hunters to carefully inspect every old penny they come across. And when you look at auction events in recent times, rare wheat pennies have already crossed six-figure and seven-figure prices, especially when authenticated by top grading services like PCGS or NGC, and these coins become the headline stars of prestigious auctions, gaining media attention and capturing the imagination of new collectors who wonder whether they too could discover a multimillion-dollar coin hiding in an old box in the attic or inherited from family change jars. And every time one of these rare coins sells for a shocking price, hope spreads across the collector community, because if there is one valuable coin out there, there could be more, still waiting to be found by someone who knows what to look for. And speaking of what to look for, the 1946 wheat penny demands attention to fine microscopic details and measurements, such as its magnetic pull, its metallic sound when dropped, weight variations compared to standard 3.11 grams copper pennies, surface texture and luster that differs when using incorrect alloys, striking sharpness or weakness in features that reveal misalignment, and error-related distortions around lettering such as Liberty, In God We Trust, and the date, all of which can help determine authenticity and rarity. And as technology advances, collectors use microscopes, digital scanners, and professional grading techniques to distinguish genuine mint errors from damage caused after circulation, because condition matters enormously in pricing, and a flawless or near-perfect 1946 error penny could multiply its value exponentially compared with a heavily worn example, especially when mint state condition proves the error occurred at the factory and not later from ordinary handling, which is essential in determining elite auction status and seven-figure earning potential. And the beauty of this story is that people can still find wheat pennies in circulation today, tucked away in old jars, bank rolls, pocket change, flea markets, estate sales, and hidden collections untouched for decades, which means the hunt is real and ongoing, inspiring everyday people to become treasure seekers. And the idea that a $12 million rarity may be hiding somewhere unnoticed continues to fuel the passion of those searching, including young collectors learning the art of numismatics and experts who dedicate lifetimes to discovering new varieties. And what makes the 1946 wheat penny so legendary is not just the theoretical value but also the mystery. Last. Today we're going to explore the unbelievable tale of the 1951 wheat penny, a coin that most people would overlook as just another old penny, but collectors know that even the most ordinary seeming coin can hold a secret that turns it into a jaw-dropping fortune. And this particular penny has become known as a coin that could be worth as much as $6 million, all because of its rare and fascinating errors, mistakes, and a combination of unique features that make it incredibly valuable. To collectors who are constantly hunting for these tiny mistakes that slipped through the minting process and made their way into everyday life, and just imagine the thrill of discovering that a penny you might find in a jar at home, in spare change, or in a yard sale box could secretly be worth millions and completely change your life, because that is the exciting possibility when it comes to the extraordinary 1951 wheat penny, a coin minted in San Francisco in a year when the United States Mint was producing wheat cents by the hundreds of millions but still managed to let some extremely rare errors sneak into circulation. And that is why collectors are fascinated by coins like this that represent a historical moment and also contain those accidental imperfections that make them stand out from the rest. And so today we're going to take you on a journey deep into what makes this coin so incredibly special, what kinds of mistakes and mint errors have been documented, why collectors are willing to pay such huge amounts of money, and how you can potentially identify whether you might have one of these multi-million-dollar treasures hiding somewhere within your reach, because while most 1951 pennies are only worth a few cents or maybe a few dollars in better condition, there are rare examples that have demonstrated the potential to bring value soaring into the millions when all the right factors come together, and that's what makes this story so electrifying for anyone who collects coins or even just enjoys imagining the possibility that incredible value can hide in the most ordinary places. So let's dig deeper into everything that makes the 1951 wheat penny such a sensational subject in coin collecting circles. And first we should look at the basic context of the wheat penny series, which ran from 1909 to 1958 and featured the iconic wheat ears on the reverse side representing American agriculture and Lincoln on the front honoring his legacy, and throughout all those years countless pennies were minted at various locations including Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco, each of which is identified by a tiny mint mark placed below the date. And in the case of the 1951 wheat penny, that little s beneath the year tells us it was minted in San Francisco, a city well known for producing many coins with subtle die issues because of how frequently dies were reused and how heavy the production demands were at the time, especially due to economic growth and the need for large quantities of circulating money. But even though the San Francisco mint workers were skilled, mistakes still happened, and those mistakes are exactly what collectors are desperately searching for today, because unlike a normal penny printed correctly without defects, the most valuable coins are the ones that show something went differently during the minting process, like doubling of letters and numbers, imperfections on Lincoln's portrait, flaws in the reverse design, lamination cracks, clipped planchets, off-center strikes, repunched mint marks, and any unusual anomaly that shows the coin veered from perfection. And when you take one specific year like 1951 and focus on the San Francisco mint where these conditions existed, suddenly you get a scenario where hidden treasures are just waiting to be found. And one of the major reasons these pennies can fetch unbelievable prices is the presence of a repunched mint mark error called RPM, which occurs when the mint mark was punched into the die more than once but not perfectly aligned, leaving behind a doubled look under magnification that collectors admire because it represents a literal human touch mistake in the coin production process. And there are known varieties of RPM errors for the 1951 wheat penny that add massive value, and the more dramatic and clearly visible the doubling, the higher the worth. But that's not the only type of error, because some rare examples show doubling across the date or the word liberty or even the motto "In God We Trust," and this type of doubling, known as a double die error, is one of the most famous and sought-after mistakes in all of coin collecting history because it can create striking visual difference that immediately screams rarity to any experienced collector. And another fascinating possibility that pushes the value even higher is if the coin was struck on the wrong planchet. For example, if a penny ended up being minted on a foreign coin blank, or a slightly different composition, which could have happened in years when the mint was producing coins for other countries or experimenting with metal blends, and that creates a unique and one-of-a-kind collectible item that could be worth millions due to the rarity and the dramatic nature of the mistake. And still there's more, because some 1951 wheat pennies show off-center strikes where the design lands too far left or right, leaving a blank crescent of metal that instantly marks it as different from a standard penny. And depending on how far off the strike is, especially if the date and mint mark remain visible, collectors will pay very high prices to add it to their collections. And then there are the clipped planchets, which happen when the coin blank is cut incorrectly, leaving part of the edge sliced off, so when the coin is struck it has a curved missing area, making it incredibly desirable. And combine that with a year like 1951, where not a huge number of these flawed coins were preserved, and again you have a formula for a valuable collector's item that could fetch enormous sums at auction. and the excitement builds when considering coins that show strike-through debris errors where foreign material like grease or dust accidentally interfered with the minting process, leaving blank or distorted parts of the design, something many collectors love because it is a unique fingerprint of the coin's creation. And another important factor determining the ultimate value of a 1951 wheat penny is its condition, which collectors refer to as its grade. Since the more pristine and untouched the coin is, the more valuable it becomes, because top-grade coins that survive decades without damage are extremely rare, especially for something that circulated heavily like a 1951 penny. And high-grade examples certified by professional coin grading services can skyrocket into astronomical price ranges, especially when combined with major errors and clean surfaces. With original mint luster shining brightly as if the coin was just struck yesterday, and imagine the thrill of holding such a coin, knowing that among millions of ordinary pennies yours is the one that carries an error so special that collectors might fight at auction for it and send the bidding into the millions. And that is exactly what has happened with rare wheats that collectors have discovered unexpectedly, turning pocket change into legendary payouts, and the story only gets better when you consider how many of these coins are still sitting undiscovered in homes around the world because people simply don't know what to look for or assume their old pennies are worth only face value, when in reality a microscopic detail can make the difference between 1 cent and $6 million, and that's why searches for these rare 1951 wheat pennies continue growing, driven by excitement and hope that a lucky finder might stumble upon one with the perfect combination of rarity, error, and condition that makes it a multi-million-dollar treasure, because coin collecting is not just a hobby but a hunt for history, a chase for survival stories where tiny pieces of metal escape normal wear and tear and become icons of numismatic art, and the 1951 wheat penny stands at the center of that excitement, with numerous documented varieties and still the possibility that new discoveries await, maybe in someone's attic, a forgotten piggy bank, or a box of coins from a relative who used to save pennies because they believed they were special, and that belief might turn out to be true if one of those saved coins happens to have the right flaws.